my Lunch and Learn presentation today for you is a community's voice, the significance of building community partnership in the study of Alzheimer's disease in in older Black and African American women. And I just want to take a little bit of time right here to thank the UCSD Shiley-Marcos ADRC for inviting me to this talk, and super humbled and excited to share what we're doing by way of BWITS. So let me proceed to the next slide. Here are some lunch and learning objectives that I have for those in attendance. By the end of our session, I hope that you will be able to recognize the prevalence of AD in Black African American women and the study's background and significance, as well as appreciate the importance of community-based participatory research and the establishment of a community advisory board that aligns research with the needs of the targeted community. And lastly, understand the initial results of consulting with a CAB in AD-focused research and consider their insight and relevance for future CBPR involving use of a CAB. So we'll start talking numbers now. I'm sure this isn't a shock, but maybe to some. Nearly 7 million Americans are living with AD or ADRD, and 2/3 of this number are women. So that's pretty significant. As we drill down even further, Black African Americans are twice as likely to receive an AD or ADRD diagnosis when compared to their white counterparts. And if we drill down even more, Black African American women are at the most high risk for developing AD, ADRD in their lifetime. So key word in our study is tau. What is tau? Many of us on here may know, but for those who don't, it is a protein that is found in the brain that has been linked to Alzheimer's disease. And the takeaway from this slide is that it is found in higher levels in women when compared to men. The study background of how we arrived to BWITS is understanding that Black African American women are significantly underrepresented in AD research, and particularly in AD biomarker studies. So the AD-related pathological mechanisms are very poorly understood in Black African Americans across the board, and the combined influence of race in Alzheimer's disease is even less understood. We do know that neuroinflammation and insulin resistance, with insulin resistance being a defining feature of prediabetes and diabetes, are known to influence AD risk and pathogenesis. We know that women, we have a more robust immune response when we compare ourselves to men, and much greater health implications from insulin resistance, as well as inflammatory markers that have illustrated a stronger relationship to cognition in women versus men, particularly in Black African American women. Insulin resistance is more prevalent and may contribute to an even greater risk of neuroinflammation. So it's important to note here that neuroinflammation plays a key role in AD pathogenesis, including the development of tau. And prediabetes and diabetes are certainly risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. Additional risk factors that are thought to influence neuroinflammation and insulin resistance are broken down in two categories. We have our modifiable risk factors, which include diet, exercise, sleep, in addition to the non-modifiable, which would be social determinants of health, and that also includes structural racism. In an effort to accomplish this goal, BWITS is utilizing community-based participatory research and the assembly of a CAB to understand the risk that African American women have when it comes to developing Alzheimer's. Another key takeaway here is research does suggest that Addressing modifiable risk factors may delay or even prevent up to 40% of dementia cases. So this is critical to note. And we think, okay, well, what are these modifiable risk factors? And I won't read through all of them, but the ones that I have bolded and highlighted, age and genetics in particular, are risk factors across the board for everyone, regardless of age, regardless of ethnicity or sex. But in Black African American women in particular, we're concerned about this head-heart connection because there's substantial numbers of women, excuse me, Black African American women who are affected by heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. So that becomes very problematic in this demographic. So what exactly is BWITS investigating? And the in a nutshell, we want to know, how do biological and lifestyle modifiable risk factors impact tau burden, tau accumulation, and cognitive outcomes in older Black women? So BWITS is a multi-site collaborative design between UCSD and UCLA. And we seek to recruit 100 older Black African American women. The way that's broken down, 50 in LA, 50 in San Diego. And these visits will take place at community centers in the neighborhoods that have a higher proportionate number of Black and African American adults. The data that we will collect will be blood-based markers of inflammation, insulin resistance, AD pathology markers, and we'll also be using thinking tests, questionnaires to determine both cognitive and physical functioning, as well as social determinants of health. The BWITS inclusion criteria: you have to be Black and African American to participate, age between 65 and 80, living independently, English as a primary language. Part of our screening process is administering the telephone MOCA. So you need to score between 13 to 20 in order to be eligible, and have a family history of AD and or self-reported memory complaints. And you have to have an available study partner. And that question that comes up often is like, well, what is a study partner? And this could be anyone. It could be a son or a daughter, it could be a relative, it could be a neighbor, but anyone who can speak to the potential participants' functional abilities. Their involvement in the study is at one point, and we ask them questions that should probably take no more than 10 minutes of their time. So that potential participant must have a available study partner. Here is a list of our exclusionary conditions and exclusionary medications, where they have medications that have considerable impacts to cognitive function and inflammation. This is a visual representation of our participant timeline. Participants will engage with this study over the span of 24 months or 2 years. So starting with screening, which can be done in person or over the phone. The screening process includes questionnaires. We take a family history, demographics, and this is where we would do the what we call brief cognitive test, or the T-MOCA. If they are eligible to participate and they want to participate, we schedule a baseline visit for them. And this is this may be the first in-person visit for some of them if they screened over the phone and did not come to any kind of like pre-screening event. So the baseline visit must be in person, and we get the study consent. We do a blood draw, do questionnaires, and a battery of neurocognitive testing. At that visit, we will give the study participant a actigraphy device, and they have to wear this device for 7 days, consecutively for 7 days. That is a part of the study. What is an optional component of the study is a home sleep test for one night only. And again, there's a we're seeing the connection between sleep apnea and cognitive function. And so while this is a very important aspect of the study, the home sleep portion is optional, but the 7-day actigraphy device is not. At 12 months, we have a 12-month, what we call follow-up. This does not require any in-person visits at this time. We will mail questionnaires and reminder calls to the participant and have them send back the questionnaires to us. And then at the final visit, it will be at 24 months, excuse me. And it's very similar, if not identical almost, to the baseline visit, blood draw, questionnaires, more neurocognitive testing. So this slide, this depicts the four tiers of CBPR and retention strategies. And it's important to note, CBPR uses a multidisciplinary team approach to foster community reciprocity and community partnerships. So simply stated, reducing barriers for promoting ethical research and the potential to empower communities, address disparities, and most importantly, building trust. This model reminds us as researchers and the research community how we should view members of the community as partners in the process rather than solely subjects. One key takeaway from this slide is just how much BWITS is community-based and focused. We are heavily engaged in supporting community through events and educational activities. Also, we have designed this study to be very convenient and flexible. We come to the community rather than having the community come to us. We will give certain aspects of their health results as well as compensation. And just I want to, as you see at the bottom of the slide, highlight that utilizing a community-based participatory research approach specifically to construct a community advisory board is key community engagement strategy for addressing the representation gap in health research. And everything that I've mentioned up until this point is extremely important, and it's what has led us to this point. However, I really want to focus on the significance, if you will, of community advisory boards and the type of research that we're doing. So why are they so important? Our CAB members are often comprised of trusted community stakeholders, and they help to dispel many of the myths about clinical research, as well as ensuring the appropriateness, the respect, and equity of any potential community research participants. CABs also provide insight into the perceptions and preferences and priorities of the community. And again, I want to stress that they operate as partners and advisors to the research team. This quote from the article listed at the bottom, CABs may engage in processes of formation, operation, and maintenance to accommodate the realities of working in a dynamic community setting. I will expound upon that in a few further slides, but simply put, CABs are created and they will ultimately work to keep themselves going, all while adapting to the ever-evolving nature of the communities that they serve. So they play a pivotal role. So I will highlight here specifically about our BWIT CAB. And our CAB is made up of 7 women. I believe 4 from San Diego, 3 from LA, and they have unique backgrounds in a variety of fields, from healthcare to caregiving, advocacy work, nonprofit organizations, and just the backgrounds that they bring in and of itself has proven to be invaluable to our research team. We meet with the CAB during the study development stage. We were meeting with the CAB bi-monthly or every other week. So twice a month we would meet with them. And then that we've inched to the data collection phase, we are meeting with them monthly. There has been no stone unturned with what we have shared with the CAB. All aspects of the study have been discussed, and the CAB has helped promote and create study awareness through community events such as the Alzheimer's Association Walk and a variety of community health fairs. So, how is a CAB formed? This is like the golden question. And I think I was sharing with someone not too long ago that there is no world's best chocolate chip cookie recipe to follow when it comes to forming a CAB, as the process is going to vary dependent upon the program and dependent upon the study. But formation process of the CAB is the identification and recruitment of stakeholders for participation in the CAB and defining the role and purpose of the CAB. So the research team really needs to consider at this stage, what exactly are they looking for in CAB members? Maybe you have past relationships or established community connections. In that case, that would be purposive, kind of snowballing approach in nature. You may have referrals from colleagues. If you've worked with CAB members before, you may have referrals from CAB members that you've worked with before. But additional things that you would want to consider is what type of perspectives are you looking for these members to bring? What type of skill are you seeking? Do they have to have past experience with research, or do you just want them to have, expertise or some type of experience on the health topic or condition? Who's going to be impacted by the research that you're doing, and what type of representation are you seeking? Are you seeking, something geographical, or are you looking for a particular race or ethnic group or cultural group? So those are things that must be considered when forming a CAB. So our BWITS CAB was formed in the following manner. Members of our research team had connections and suggestions and reached out to those individuals, and those individuals had connections and suggestions. And so that's how this CAB that we're working with essentially was formed. Once we had I would say a healthy number of individuals that expressed some interest, not commitment, but interest. We did send an invitation letter to the potential CAB members, and that letter outlined the purpose, the goals, expectations of serving on the BWITS CAB. After that, we established a meeting, if you will, kind of like a first introductory meeting. Again, this was not a meeting that said, oh, all of these individuals are on the CAB. It was just for those who had a highly expressed desire to be a part of the CAB. Prior to this meeting, we did send, I'll call it a booklet. And this booklet had, in those circles, it had the actual pictures of the potential CAB members, their names, it had their biographies. So that way, when the individuals came to the meeting, they could know, who are these potential women that will be on their CAB and what they know and what they're already contributing in the community and how they could positively impact the CAB. And after that meeting, we followed up. So via email, phone call, we followed up with those potential individuals. And I think everyone who attended that meeting agreed to participate on the CAB. That's just how excited they were about what we were doing with BWITS. Um, it's important to stress that you have to establish trust and relationships with the cabin. This takes time. And it does take consistent representation, if you will, from the research team. And we need to remember that partnerships are often made with individuals rather than organizations. So just consistency is key with who you have engaging with the CAB. So now we have the process of operation, which is develop guiding principles to ensure that the values of the community are represented and respected, and establish protocols for leadership and decision making. So we're kind of like in this, in the throes of this piece right now, but this is how a visual representation of how we kind of operate. So our cabs are held via Zoom. All of our cab meetings are via Zoom. And myself as the community engagement coordinator and Nadine as our BWITS program manager, we facilitate each cab meeting. Our meetings are dedicated to various BWITS topics. We have an agenda that we send out to the cab at least 1 week prior to the upcoming meeting. So they can review any documentation, they can review the agenda of what they can expect to participate in. And the initial part of our study development, the CAB would break off into a breakout room, and Nadine and I would, patiently wait, and they would discuss the agenda. And at about maybe 10 minutes before the closing of the meeting, we would all reconvene, and they would share what they discussed relevant to the agenda that we outlined, and that just kind of helps keep them on task. And we would take notes, and but there was a shift at one point, and I think that shift was reflective of just the rapport that we were building with the cab, so much to the point they were like, no, we don't want to break out anymore. We actually want you to be a part of this meeting. One, they could get real-time feedback if they had any questions that came up on the agenda. But two, I think it just truly speaks to how comfortable they started to feel with sharing these very lively and insightful discussions about the project and the research. And then after the meeting, we summarize what took place, and we will send a brief summary to the CAB, to their emails, but also we talk about them we talk about the outcome of our CAB meeting at the following research team meeting. So it's kind of like a cyclical process. This slide is basically an example of, well, I shouldn't say an example, it is one of our agendas. And I think this is our agenda for our second meeting. And as you can see, each of these agendas were consistent. We have upcoming events, we have a follow-up since last meeting, we have new business items, we have BWITS housekeeping. In particular, you'll notice on this agenda that we were looking to structure the roles of the CAB and who wanted to be a scribe or a reporter or a timekeeper. So everyone kind of, and we didn't assign these, this is something that they decided amongst themselves, but it's really important that your CAB, I think the takeaway from this is important to ensure that your CAB can access project details and backgrounds, any timelines or goals that you have established, milestones, and also be able to reach the research team or contacts. And we do have a shared drive with necessary but compliant appropriate research docs and info that the CAB can access. And we make sure that we keep the CAB updated with any progress reports or development, because you have to understand that their awareness of what's going on leads and contributes to their comprehensive understanding that essentially aids in their ambassadorship and guidance efforts that they provide to the research team. So it's important to keep that in mind and consider that. And then lastly, you have maintenance. And this is to ensure ongoing attention, to evaluate the actions, outcomes of the CAB, and consideration of plans for sustainability of the CAB. And even though this is last, called maintenance, you really should be thinking about this, during the formation stage. Like, how are you going to maintain this group? What is it going to look like? And it's really the CAB, if you will. It's ultimately the CAB who defines the meaning of their sustainability for their continued partnership. So it's important that you consider some of these points that I've listed here for the sustainability and maintenance. So you want to inspire your CAB. You want to make sure that they know that they have a sense of empowerment and capacity building to promote the retention and satisfaction of what they're doing. This may mean, maybe even initiating a feasible CAB-led project with minimal staff support. You also want to consistently acknowledge, not just at the beginning, but throughout, that this is an investment of their time and resources and expertise that you are beyond grateful for, whether that's in a consultant fee or just things that you can do to verbally acknowledge how meaningful their contribution is. That encourages them to keep going and want to stay involved. You want to update them regularly in between meetings, because it's okay to form informal relationship building with the group, because that helps to maintain the communication, one, but it lets them know that even outside of the CAB, what they mean to your team. And so, for example, we had a member who wasn't able to make a couple of meetings, and we make sure that we contact them and see how they're doing, and bring them up to speed, keep them abreast on what we've spoken about. And they'll say, oh, tell them I said hi, and delivering these messages. And so just making sure that we touch base with them outside of just research related things. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind as those of us in the research community is that it's essential to continuously self-reflect on our own positions of privilege and power as researchers, and just making sure that they know how we're consulting with them. They are partners in this process. Currently, our CAB is helping assist our team in the process of preparing a manuscript that will highlight their role and their participation in the study. They have aided and contributed to poster presentations that we've done. So this is an all hands on deck, very inclusive process that we're doing. So here are just a few examples of how the BWITS CAB, how their input and guidance have led to modifying a number of initially proposed study elements. The first big one that that the CAB suggested changing was modifying the inclusion and exclusion criteria. One of our initial exclusion criteria in this was diabetes. And the CAB was like, wait, you're looking at African American women, right? So, we can't exclude that when so many of us are affected by that condition. So we removed that as an exclusionary criteria. Also lowering the participant age minimum. So it was initially 60, and I think the cab was like, oh, it needs to be 50, but we settled on 60 years old. One to help increase the recruitment pool, but also to balance the biological rationale of what we're looking for. Another thing that was changed was increasing the participant compensation to truly reflect the reality of study time and the challenges of recruiting from an underrepresented population. We have, and another point on this slide, we have our graduate researcher on our team who will be taking a closer look at grief and loss and the impact on cognition. And we presented this to the CAB to get their feedback on some of the questionnaires, and they appealed for a more sensitive and compassionate approach. So anything that we do, we consult with them, and they are not a shy CAB. They share their true feelings about what we're doing, and we truly appreciate that. Additional results, the study logo design they picked. I'm sure you can tell by now which one they selected. Also, they have helped with recruitment strategies and materials. They've identified study visit locations in the community that we should consider and use for our study, and then also have discussed how to address potentially culturally insensitive neurocognitive testing or questionnaire results. So in conclusion, we have witnessed how early interactions between our research team and the BWITS CAB illustrate how a number of topics may have been approached in a suboptimal manner had a CAB not been in place. Also, the CAB is an essential part of this study, aiding in the promotion of both long and positive relationships between researchers and the Black African American community. And this is an iterative process. So this is going to be ongoing discussion, developments that will reflect the CAB's vital role in the review of just other subsequent topics to come. And all of this is in hopes that whatever results come out of this study will help inform ADRD lifestyle interventions and promote better health outcomes for Black African American women. I want to, if you don't take anything away but this slide, I want to just highlight, and we can't and should not forget that we need to start dispelling some of the myths and misconceptions that there are about engaging underrepresented and underserved demographics and populations in research. NIH Revitalization Act of 1993, while it has enhanced participation of African Americans in NIH funded research, we're not there yet. So we need to make every effort to intensify and engage underrepresented groups in general, but in BWIT's case, Black African American women, and especially in Alzheimer's and dementia research. We have historical context that we will not and should not forget, but we can't and we shouldn't continue to press these as the primary driving factors for why underrepresented groups, African Americans, are not participating. This is no longer the primary driving factor in why they're underrepresented in research. And so we need to make it our goal and mission to figure out what we need to do as a research community to engage underrepresentation in our studies. We've had two community events. And those 2 events alone have yielded nearly 40 pre-screens. This is just 2 events and just talking about BWIDS and talking about the research. And so this, to me, our team has been completely blown away and humbled by the reception, the positive reception that we're getting from the community and potential participants. And even outside of these 2 events, we have a study phone, and I have gotten calls from multiple people who weren't even in attendance at these events, and they were like, so and so told me I need to call you. And we talk and I tell them about what we're doing, and they're like, hand raised, I want to participate if I'm eligible. To another story, I left a voicemail for a pre-screening participant and gave her the study phone number. I do not know how she managed to contact the ADRC. I don't even know the ADRC's phone number, but somehow she found her way to the ADRC and said, hey, I'm looking for Michelle Jackson and I'm trying to call her back. But this is just how eager and excited and fascinated they are. And this is just a true testament and speaks to this group wanting to be included and being part of historically groundbreaking research that can have a lasting impact for decades to come. So I wanted to leave everyone with that slide. This is our wonderful research team, and we are just all humbled and honored by the experience to work with this group and what we are hoping to contribute to the research community. And this is our just kind of informational slide. I encourage you to visit our website for more study information. And for those of you who are wondering if the orange shirt was by coincidence or design, it definitely was by design. And I want to thank you for your time, your attention, and any questions or comments that you have at this point.